Yeah.
And he's like, I can't even get you to walk out to your Jeep without being in pain again. He's like, you're getting cut. And like Studley and I were doing great. Like we were, 2CW was hot. The Steves were hot. We were working literally every weekend, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it was done. I retired. And I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice. I retired in Oswego, like around Valentine's Day. And it was a couple of days later I was having my first surgery. And there wasn't a time to let it really sink in that it was done. Like I went from fully working out to I can't walk. It was really kind of freaky, and being someone that was used to being in control of their body, it didn't settle right in my head because I couldn't control it. And it sucked, but I didn't want to be, I didn't know what my mobility was going to be like and all that kind of stuff. But they did the first surgery. It only lasted about a week before the spasms were back. And they went in and they did a spinal fusion. And they found that my sciatic nerve was encased in scar tissue, so they had to bolt my head in and have me face down on the table longer, and they triggered my sciatic nerve so that I would twitch. And as they did that, they shaved the scar tissue off of my sciatic nerve. Otherwise, the spasms never would have stopped.
That does not sound like a fun night at the office, my friend. No way.
Yep, my orthopedic surgeon said it was one of the worst that he'd seen.
Wow, that's insane. But the recovery from that. How long did it take to recover from that back surgery?
I was cleared. The incision didn't heal until about 3 months after the surgery. There was an infection in the top of it where I had to pack an open hole down to my spine with saline-soaked gauze twice a day and covered up with Tegaderm, which is just like a fancy overpriced Band-Aid. That went from April until sometime in June that I was doing that.
Just to illustrate to the listeners, because you showed me photos of this. I mean, Steve literally had a hole in his back. There was literally a hole, and not a small cut or an incision. There was a hole that he would have to stuff and clean and wrap continuously. I mean, that's crazy to even think about.
Size-wise, like if you took your thumb, you could have fit your thumb up to at least the first knuckle down into my back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the fact.
That's how big the hole was.
The fact that you bounced back from that, and kind of where this is going is the fact that you somehow, some way, recovered from that degree of surgery, and maybe not full time, but you've been back inside of a ring.
Yep. My first match back from that back surgery was a table tennis.
Oh my.
And I had 4 days notice that I was going to be in that tables match. I was supposed to, it was for In Your Face Wrestling. It was their Memories, Moments, and Mayhem, their M3 in 2016, I think. And I was supposed to do a run-in the main event and help NWO clean house with a steel chair. That's all I was supposed to do.
Man.
Vigo called me the Tuesday before the show after I just got done polishing off a pizza and like 2 dozen wings. And he's like, hey, you going to be at the show on Saturday? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, can you go? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be at the show. He's like, no, can you work? And I'm like, yeah, I'm in the main. I'm doing a run-in, swinging a chair, take home. And he's like, no, can you work a match? And I'm like, dude, I haven't been near a ring in 3 years. I'm like, no, I can't work a match. I don't even have any gear. And he's like, well, you know people. I'm like, what do you mean I know people? He's like, you know people that can make you gear in time. I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, so you think you could do a match? And I'm like, what what's going on? He told me his partner, Lieutenant Dan, Sergeant Fury, Dan Roberts, one of my students, was injured and couldn't be in the tables match, which was the blow off to their angle, and he needed a replacement partner. And he talked me into doing a tables match, even though I was going through 2 tables. And my first match back, I got gear made. I called Easy Money. He got me some gear made. I borrowed a pair of boots. I even got a brand new T-shirt made because that's how we were trained, the World of Hurt. All of that in 4 days. And I was in a match. It was me and Vigo versus Roman Dominguez, and I can't think of his name. He was a guy out of Buffalo. And we ended up winning the tables match. So, yeah, that was my welcome back into the business, was a tables match.
You know, that's a testament to dedication, passion, and absolute insanity.
Yeah, that's called the sickness.
That's right. That's right. That's what Roddy Piper talks about, the sickness. That's right. So no, it's so bringing everything current day. Steve Kruz and yours truly, David Barnabas Spector, were actually just beginning to be in talks about Darkness Worldwide returning to upstate New York. You know, our home offices at this point are in Cincinnati, Ohio, but we were talking about returning to upstate New York and working together finally after all these years, because I've known you for quite some time, man, and we've never actually had a chance to work together. And that's, you know, no matter if, you know, natural disasters, worldwide pandemics, before this is all said and done, you and I absolutely are going to make sure that we work together.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Most definitely. So that was very much part 1 of this particular episode of Radio Dark. Before we transition into part 2, where we start to get into talking about Steve's endeavors into the stratosphere of paranormal activity, before we move forward, Steve, tell the listeners, where can they find you on social media?
So on Twitter, my handle is SteveOKruz, SteveOKruz. Facebook is also SteveOKruz, or Steve Kruz. Do not search Steve Kruz, Cruz, because you will get a gay porn star. And yes, that was intentional with my name. And then
I did not know that.
I did not know that. Yes, I decided to rib everybody that can't spell my name right. So enjoy if you want to spell it the wrong way. That's your thing. I ain't judging you, but I don't want to see it again. And then on Instagram, I am Inked Bald Guy, INKEDBALDGUY. And on the Instagram, you will see a link to the Killer Steve / Steve Kruz Pro Wrestling Tees store. And that's, I think the link offhand is Killer Steve Kruz. KILLERSTEVEKRUZ. Yeah, that's what it is.
That's it. Yep.
And there you can find our latest merchandise that we got out. We got a couple Steve shirts and a couple single shirts on there right now.
Awesome. So, you know, so in addition to our love of pro wrestling, heavier music, Steve and I also share a bit of a passion for the paranormal. And Steve's kind of been into this a wee bit longer than I have, or at least wasn't so much of a chicken as I've been, because he's really the one that kind of nudged me to move forward into seeing some of these things firsthand. But, you know, talk a little bit about what got you interested in the paranormal. I mean, since both of us are from that upstate New York area, that seems to be a bit of a hotbed for paranormal activity, and I think simply because it's an area of the country that's been established and been around for so very long, just my personal take. I feel like places that are older, that have older structures and more history, are more prone to have more paranormal type activity. But rather than me put words in your mouth, go ahead. What got you interested in pursuing more of your paranormal pursuits?
The first stuff I ever experienced was when I was a kid. I don't know if it was around like 8th grade or early high school. Buddy of mine, Chris Cabot, his parents they were the caretakers of Fort Ticonderoga, which was a Revolutionary War fort in Ticonderoga, New York, where I grew up. And their apartment was inside the fort. So there was always like this little stairway that went up and it said private, and I didn't ever know what it was from any of the tours I did there when I was a kid. So we went there every year for school trips and stuff. But that's where they lived. So I'd go and I'd spend the night over at his place. And literally they lived in a fort. Like, he had trapdoors in his bedroom. It was all stuff that was set up, for the war. And he told me stories about, how the dogs there were Dobermans that roamed the park or roamed the fort at night. How they would start barking over by the dungeon, and you would hear chains and moaning and all that stuff. And the chairs in some of the museums would start rocking and all that stuff. And I didn't believe him because I was a kid and I just didn't believe and didn't know about that stuff until we went exploring when we were kids. And you get over by the dungeon area where they used to hold the prisoners, which unfortunately now has been renovated, and they made it into a kitchen, a revolutionary kitchen, which is dumb because it's not what it was. But you could hear chains clinking, you could hear mumbles, and you could hear groans like people in pain and anguish, and the dogs were going nuts. And the only thing that was in any of that area was mannequins. There was no people. You could walk through the displays in the fort where it was the museum parts, and we saw a rocking chair rocking. Nobody in the rocking chair, obviously. Fort's closed. And it's just an old rocking chair. It was an artifact, and it was rocking on its own.
Yeah, that's
and he said that kind of stuff was normal. And, where they had like a buddy of mine told me a story. He was in the Fife and Drum Corps, and he played. That was like a popular summer job in our town, was playing in the Fife and Drum Corps for the fort. His like great grandfather was served time in the Army there, and he claims that when he was playing, he looked up and he saw his grandfather watching him play in the courtyard of the fort. So the fort has always been well known, well documented. Ghost hunters went there and did an investigation, got a whole bunch of evidence. Unfortunately, they went when it was a kitchen, not a dungeon. But it's a well documented thing, and that's kind of what gave me the taste for it when I was younger, was all that kind of stuff.
I got you. You and I have a few locations we visited that are, along the same lines, if not the exact same places. One of them, we visited at different times, but you had mentioned to me that you had had some experiences at Eastern State Penitentiary, located in Philadelphia. For those that don't know, it's this gigantic prison that's like smack dab in a suburb area of Philly, which is very bizarre. You're just traveling through streets, restaurants, shops, homes. Next thing you know, boom, there's a prison right in the middle of everything. And I know I visited there, I believe, back in maybe 2009 or 2010. Took some photos and had some really interesting anomalies. We'll leave it at that. But talk about your experiences at Eastern State Penitentiary.
At Eastern State, I didn't have any pictures. I didn't see anything, but it was more the stuff that I felt. When we could go into some of the rooms, like where the medical tables were, and in the, I think it was bathrooms, like shower stalls, and maybe even some of the cells.